Welcome to Long Story Short. Today, we are dissecting the ultimate blueprint of the surveillance state. George Orwell's 1984. Imagine a world where your thoughts are a crime, where history is erased and rewritten daily, and where the truth is simply whatever the government says it was 5 minutes ago. We are going to break down exactly how the nation of Oceania controls its citizens, and why this book is more relevant today than when it was first published. Long story short, 1984 is not just a book about a bad government. It is a terrifying surgical examination of the death of the individual. Written in 1949 as a direct response to the rise of totalitarian regimes, it imagines a world where the state owns not just your body, but your reality. First, let's establish the world. The globe is split into three massive, constantly warring superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia. We are in Airstrip 1, a decaying, bombed-out territory formerly known as London. The government here is simply called the Party, and their ruling ideology is Ingsoc. To survive here, you must blindly follow three contradictory slogans: war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. At the absolute top of the pyramid is Big Brother. You see his face on every coin, every stamp, and every poster plastered across the city. He is the face of the party, all-knowing, all-powerful, and completely intangible. Beneath him is the inner party, the ruling elite who make up just 2% of the population, but hold all the power and privilege. Below them is the outer party, the miserable, constantly monitored administrative workers, and finally, the proles. The proles make up 85% of the population. The party keeps them utterly impoverished, uneducated, and distracted by cheap lotteries, fabricated music, and gin. Because a distracted population never rebels. Enter our protagonist, Winston Smith. Winston is a 39-year-old, frail member of the outer party who works at the Ministry of Truth. His daily job is literally to rewrite the past. When the party makes a promise it cannot keep or changes its alliances in the endless global war, Winston rectifies the old newspapers and books so it looks like the party was right all along. If a person is executed and wiped from existence, Winston drops their records into an incinerator called a memory hole. He makes them an unperson, but Winston is committing the ultimate offense. He is a thought criminal. He remembers the truth. He knows the past is being altered. In a desperate act of defiance, he buys a forbidden antique diary and writes 4 words that seal his fate: down with Big Brother. To understand Winston's trap, we have to look at the mechanisms of control. The party maintains its iron grip through 4 ironically named ministries. The Ministry of Peace handles war. The Ministry of Plenty handles starvation and rationing. The Ministry of Truth handles propaganda and lies. And the most feared of all, the Ministry of Love, a windowless fortress which handles torture and re-education. They also control the population through language. They are developing Newspeak, a stripped-down version of English designed to make rebellion impossible by systematically removing the words needed to express it. If you do not have a word for freedom, you literally cannot formulate the complex thought of being free. The vocabulary gets smaller every single year. Furthermore, they force citizens to practice doublethink. This is the psychological mechanism that allows a person to hold 2 completely contradictory ideas in their head at the exact same time, and genuinely believe both of them. Winston's philosophical rebellion eventually becomes physical. He meets Julia, a younger outer party worker, who hands him a covert note that simply says, "I love you." On the outside, Julia is the perfect, zealous party member. She wears the red sash of the Junior Anti-Sex League and shouts the loudest during the daily 2 minutes hate. But behind closed doors, she is a pragmatic rebel. This is a crucial contrast for your essays. Winston's rebellion is intellectual. He wants to understand how the party works and dream of a future without it. Julia's rebellion is entirely personal and physical. She hates the party simply because it stops her from having fun. Together, they start a forbidden affair, eventually renting a hidden room above an antique shop in the Prole district for a fleeting moment. They think they have found a sanctuary, If Orwell's vision of total psychological control is hitting home for you, and you want to experience the absolute suffocating dread of this world firsthand, I have linked the full audiobook and physical copy in the description below. It is a completely different immersive experience when you consume the original text. For now, let's look at the trap that ends their sanctuary. Winston and Julia reach out to O'Brien, a powerful inter-party official. Winston has always felt a strange intellectual connection to O'Brien, believing he is secretly part of the Brotherhood, a legendary underground resistance group. O'Brien invites them to his luxurious apartment, gives them a subversive manifesto, and makes them swear to do whatever it takes to bring down the party. But it was all a meticulously planned trap. The kindly antique shop owner who rented them the room was actually a member of the Thought Police. The hidden room had a telescreen behind a painting the entire time. O'Brien was not a rebel leader. He was a fiercely loyal inter-party fanatic and the chief inquisitor. Winston and Julia are violently arrested and dragged to the Ministry of Love. Here, the book shifts from a dystopian thriller into a terrifying psychological horror. The party does not just want to execute Winston. Martyrs inspire rebellions. They want to cure him. O'Brien spends months physically and psychologically torturing Winston. During these sessions, O'Brien reveals the true, terrifying philosophy of the party. They do not want power to help the people or to build a utopia. They want power entirely for the sake of power. As O'Brien famously states, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. O'Brien tortures Winston until Winston truly mathematically believes that 2 + 2 makes 5. But Winston still holds on to one final shred of his humanity, his love for Julia. He has not betrayed her in his heart. Because of this, Winston is taken deep underground to room 101. This is the ultimate execution chamber of the soul. Room 101 contains the worst thing in the world, specifically tailored to whoever walks inside. For Winston, it is rats. As O'Brien straps a cage of starving rats to Winston's face, about to open the door, Winston finally breaks. He screams, "Do it to Julia, not me. Tear her face off." With that betrayal, the party takes the very last piece of Winston's humanity. The rebellion is crushed, not by death, but by complete psychological submission. The book ends with a broken, hollow, gin-soaked Winston sitting in a cafe. He looks up at a poster of Big Brother. The final sentences are the most chilling in modern literature. He had won the victory over himself. He loved Big Brother. Clears throat. To ace your final exam, you need to master 3 key symbols from the text. First, the glass paperweight. Winston buys this heavy piece of glass with a piece of coral inside at the antique shop. It represents his desperate attempt to connect with a tangible past that has been deleted. It is beautiful and utterly useless to the party. When the Thought Police arrest Winston, they smash the paperweight on the floor. This symbolizes the fragility of human memory and the total destruction of Winston's private world. Second, the telescreens. These are the mandatory 2-way televisions found in every room. They represent the complete annihilation of privacy. The party does not just watch you for illegal actions. They watch your nervous tics and facial expressions for a flicker of doubt. This is known as face crime. The telescreens prove that physical control is impossible without constant, inescapable surveillance. Third, the red-armed prole woman. Winston watches this heavy-set woman hanging laundry in the courtyard, singing a generated song. To him, she represents vitality, fertility, and the only hope for the future. He believes that if the proles ever realize their own massive strength, they could blow the party to atoms. But as the narrative proves, as long as they are kept ignorant, that hope remains a tragic fantasy. The ultimate takeaway for your essays, 1984, is a study of the mutability of the past. It shows us that if a central authority can control the language you use and control the historical records you read, they completely control your reality. If you have a paper or a test coming up, watching a summary is a great start. But reading the actual text is where you master the material and get the top grade. Click the Amazon or Audible link in the description to get the full version of 1984 right now. That is the long story short. Please like and subscribe for more literature breakdowns. See you in the next one.